Imagine you are an average worker. You live in an industrial city and you need to cover the costs of your basic requirements, that being food and rent. To do this, you need a way of getting money. Your only real option to do this is to get a job at the local factory, as you were not born into a family that could pay for your education, so you need to go into unskilled labour. As your family could not afford education, they also did not have much to leave you in terms of inheritance. So you have no real capital to jump off of and try and start your own business or buy your own factory. In order to eat, you must take a job under an employer. So you go to the factory and start working. During your time working at the factory, you are told where to work, how long to work, how to work, and you are not allowed to interact with any other workers on the production line. All these decisions are made by the employer and are made in such a way to maximize profit. You must abide by these rules and any other rules that the employer may place upon you, because if you don't, you will lose your job. At the end of the day, you receive a wage for your work, which roughly matches the cost to provide your basic requirements. But here's the thing. You've essentially been stolen from. Your employer has made a profit by selling your labour on the market and giving you a portion of that back to you in the form of a wage. But not all of it. The employer did not contribute any labour to the production of the factory and has still ended the day with more money. You realise this and you don't like it, but you don't have any other option. As if you decided not to have your labour stolen from you, you would starve to death. This scenario could be compared to a mugger placing a gun to your head and demanding your money. Your only other option is death. But what about the fact that you used the employer's private property and machines in order to make that product? What about the fact that the employer had to risk capital in order to attain that private property? Let's look at how the employer attained the means of production privately. It would have been through either inheritance, extraction of surplus value on a smaller scale to accumulate profits to buy the larger means of production, or pulling himself up by his bootstraps and saving for it. The first two still mean the employer has done less work than his workers, yet received more. The last would mean that he would have done working under another employer, in which his own surplus value would have been extracted, until he could save for his own means of production. Even if it is the last option, which is normally the rare scenario, eventually the profit received by his workers would outweigh the labour he did to save up and attain that private property over time. This is also the scenario with the most risk involved in terms of investment. However, it is absurd to claim that risk should be taken as a factor when risk is only created by the system of capitalism in the first place. It is completely unnecessary. Now, let's imagine the same situation under socialism. You live in the same industrialized city, but now you are not required to work. Your food and rent are already provided. However, not as much food and land as you want, only the amount that you require to live. You could get more food and other luxuries if you went to work, and as well as that, you find sitting at home doing nothing all day boring, so you decide to go to the local factory. Now, instead of there being an employer, the factory is run and maintained by the workers themselves. How exactly they want to work is determined by themselves through democracy. As a worker and contributor of labour, you get a say in this as well. Every week or so, the worker base of the factory assembles to discuss concerns, ideas, and establish how the factory functions. These decisions must be respected by all of the workers, though it would be the workers themselves who collectively made them. After a day of working, you receive an amount of labour vouchers depending on how much labour you contributed that day. This depends not only on the length of time but also the intensity of the labour. As different workers have different mental and physical abilities, different workers receive a different amount of labour vouchers. No one who did not contribute any labour receives any share from the proceeds of the factory's labour. From the total proceeds of labour, deductions are made, instead of all going completely to labour vouchers for the workers themselves. This is to cover the costs of two areas. That being within the factory itself, and then the costs for outside of society as well. For within the means of production, deductions are made for the replacement of used materials or tools during the production, as well as saving for possible expansion of means of production in the future, and for the cost of administrating the means of production. And for society, deductions are made for providing welfare and a basic income to all those in society, including yourself. These deductions would most likely be handled by a democratically controlled form of state apparatus. The rest of the proceeds of labour are exchanged for labour vouchers and are allocated to where they are most useful in society. You and your other workers then receive the labour vouchers based on the individual labour you contributed. You can then use these to exchange for any luxury not provided by your basic income you wish. This way, all of your labour, directly or indirectly, serves you, as opposed to a portion of it being given to your employer for them to do as they wish with it. And that's socialism. It's as simple as that. As a disclaimer, the examples provided in this video mostly apply to the 19th and early 20th century style of capitalism, though of course production lines and factories are still still used extensively, especially in third world countries. Although there are now, in the modern day, many conditions and types of employment which the traditional example of surplus value does not apply. It is, however, still important to understand, as it is an inherent part of capitalism, and even where it does not apply, usually exploitation simply takes other forms.